This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, do you want to be a guest on the PR Podcast? You know, we tape episodes every Friday at 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern, and we're always looking for new guests with new perspectives on how to do PR and how to do news better. So you should be a guest if you're either one of the two of the following. Either you're a PR pro like me, or our guest today, and you do public relations and you represent clients and you work with media on telling your clients' stories, or you're a newsroom decision maker, you're a reporter, you're an editor, you're a videographer, photographer, you're someone involved in the process of making the news, reporting the news, right? That you have a role in the finished product that ends up on the radio, on the TV, in the newspaper, online, wherever that is. Because what we want to do is we want to share best practices, tips. I don't like to call them tricks, but tactics maybe, things that make the news better, right? Things that inform our communities better and things that make our storytelling better, because that's what it ends up being, is storytelling. So if this is you and you want to be a guest, I promise we don't bite. In more than 100 episodes, haven't bitten a single guest. This is the show for you. So DM us on Twitter at the PR Podcast. Give us an idea of what you want to talk about, and we will schedule you to be a guest on an upcoming show. Now, we've got another great guest today, and it is our first repeat guest. So here we go. Scott Baradell is CEO and founder of Idea Grove, which helps its clients secure trust at scale through its unique Grow with Trust approach. Now, that approach is outlined in his new book, Trust Signals, Brand Building in a Post-Truth World, which is a #1 bestseller on Amazon in the public relations category. We are very happy for him. He is here to pick up our conversation where we last left off. Scott, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you so much. Your first repeat guest. That is a trust signal for me. I'm going to put that out there in my materials now. First repeat guest on Jody's podcast.
Well, I'll tell you, part of the reason why we had you back was because when we look at all the I don't get too caught up in analytics, right? I mean, we do this show because we love this show. But when I look at the analytics, your show from back in March of 2020 is the most listened to episode of the PR Podcast. So we thought he did it right the first time. Let's have him back.
All right. Well, it's a lot of pressure, but I'll try to top it.
So catch us up on what you've been doing. Your book came out. Tell us about it.
Well, I tell you what, it's probably the closest thing that closest thing. I did have a kidney stone once, but this is probably the closest thing for me to having a baby is writing this book, because it's been 3 long years of research, perfectionism, procrastination, writing, stop writing, focus on the business, then try to remember what I was writing before. And to finally get it done is just an amazing feeling. So I really have had a lot of help, people focusing on the business so I could focus more on the book. And now hopefully I'm going to get back in the business and use some of this research and learnings to help our clients.
All right. So for people who haven't heard your first episode, tell us about Trust Signals, Brand Building in a Post-Truth World. What's it all about?
Well, it started, and since this is a podcast for PR folks like us, I had a frustration that probably a lot of PR people have had, and I know you've done stuff on it too, Jody, of PR being very strongly associated with media relations. And this kind of one tactical thing that's kind of viewed as being this one tactic within a marketer's toolkit. I've seen over the course of my career, increasingly head of corporate communications at companies are reporting to CMOs when they used to report to CEOs. There's been a diminishing of the profession. And I think that's because PR has allowed itself to be kind of painted in this corner associated with traditional media, as traditional media has fragmented and declined in influence. And so what I want to do is get away from, media relations per se, and step back and say, what is media relations for? Why does a client come to us and ask for it? And then think about that. So what a client will tell us when I ask is they want visibility or awareness. And I say, no, that's not really what you want. If you just wanted visibility, you could much more cost effectively today just target your audience and follow them around with Google ads, right? Just follow them wherever they go. Well, you would annoy the heck out of them, but they'd be aware of you. So it's not really awareness that you want, right? What is it? You're looking for that trust, credibility, authority that's conferred upon you by a media outlet that chooses to cover you. And so what it boils down to is trust is being conferred. And in ultimately what companies are seeking when they come to a PR firm is they want to be trusted. They want their brand to be trusted by the people they're trying to reach, whether that's customers or another audience. So once I started thinking about that, I started thinking, well, you could really tie all the things an integrated agency does together under this mantle of trust. And if PR people really took a disciplined approach and redefined PR beyond kind of the gobbledygook that is out there from PRSA and others to what it really is, which is securing trust at scale for our clients, then we could really get somewhere in terms of having a clear direction for the future of PR and stop getting painted in this corner where it's all about traditional media.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so many thoughts here. One, yes, I think that it's partially our fault that we've allowed ourselves to get pigeonholed because we all know that we do so much more than that, right? It's not just getting your name in the newspaper, what I call the Moosehead effect, where, sure, I can get you an article, you cut it out, you frame it, you show it to all your friends. That's not what we do. And keying in on this idea of trust, I think is so smart and really, hits home for me too. I think trust is and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Trust is the linchpin of our society. If you don't trust somebody, game over, right? That's it. There's no more conversation before trust is established or after trust is broken.
Absolutely. And, it's down to the level of, you trust when you come to an intersection that when the light is green, that you can go through and someone not crash into you. Do you know there are some societies in the world where you can't trust that when the light is green, that you can go through the intersection? That's a reality. So there's a foundational level of trust that's required for any group of people of any size to come together. And of course, when we talk about a post-truth world, what we're talking about is in this fragmentation of information that's happened over the last 20 years, you increasingly have no standard, there are no standard gatekeepers for trust. Like, and if you go back to the old days of the news, you had the Edward R. Murrows and the Walter.
That's what I was just thinking of, right? We all came home and watched the same TV news every night. We were all on the same page.
So now,
not there anymore.
It's not that truth isn't important. It's just that we all are getting our quote unquote truth from different sources. We share our truths rather than share the truth. And when you're in an environment like that, of course, it's mostly been associated with politics, but it's equally important to brands. An example that's in the book would be Colin Kaepernick and the fact that Nike, even though he was a very controversial figure, decided to make him a spokesperson in a big campaign they did a few years ago. It inspired boycotts, people burning their shoes, all of this. But Nike was able to show that it made them a whole lot of money and was involved. It was responsible for boosting their stock price significantly. They made a lot of money off of that decision. Well, another brand that had a different audience would have been tanked or hurt by choosing Colin Kaepernick as a spokesperson. But Nike had done the research. It knew its audience. And so what this book emphasizes is there are so many choices in terms of how you get information today that it's going to be like a shotgun where your pellets are falling everywhere and you're going to have no effect unless you keenly target the sources of influence that are going to be influential and building trust with your audience, or else you're just going to be a ripple in the ocean and have no impact. And that's what it's been so easy for PR people in the past comparatively to just say, oh, if I get in the New York Times, then I've done my job. Well, guess what? Half the country doesn't trust the New York Times anymore. I had a client 10 years ago is when I first started thinking about this. I had a client 10 years ago. I got the CEO an interview with the New York Times. It was booked a week or two in advance. At the last minute, he had talked to some clients of his. He was in the oil and gas industry. They said, we don't trust the New York Times. Why do you want to be on the New York Times? They're just going to make you look bad. Now, I had vetted this. It wasn't going to make him look bad. It was going to be a good story. But the larger point was his customers, it did not serve as a trust signal to them. Oil and gas being a very conservative industry, feeling like publications like the New York Times were inaccurate. So for them, it's like, get in the Wall Street Journal, be on Fox Business, don't get in the New York Times. It wasn't that long ago that would be absurd, that a client wouldn't want to be in a publication like the New York Times. It just shows you the level at which there's been this fragmentation of the sources of trust that we have. And that's true for every brand, and every brand has to do the work to figure out, is this person I'm pitching worth it? Is this byline I'm placing in this publication, is that going to be seen by the right people? When I'm promoting it, how do I get in front of the right people? And that kind of additional work is really necessary today, because we're in such a complex information and influence environment compared to not that long ago.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's becoming increasingly important to be in front of the right audiences as opposed to the bigger audiences. Am I translating you right there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a question as to whether the bigger audiences are the bigger audiences. It used to be
bigger versus more influential, maybe, right?
Yes. And things like broad-based publications don't have the audiences they used to have. Forbes will tell you, hey, we've got X million viewers, people who come to our website, which is all true, but they don't tell you they have over 1.5 million pages on their website. So it's a big outlet, right? But in terms of that individual story you placed, out of that 1.5 million pages on the Forbes website, how many people are going to see it? So even with broad outlets, I think you have to think about, okay, is this one worth it?
Yeah, so smart. And you talked about some other things that you sort of discovered as you were writing the book that you now want to apply back into your business. What are some of the other things that you went through as you're writing that you kind of either gelled or discovered or sort of distilled into some knowledge that maybe you say, okay, I want to practice that now?
Well, I think one of the biggest things and an easy thing for PR people, traditional PR folks, to get their heads around is a concept I introduced in the book called the continuum of influence. And basically what I'm saying is what it comes down to, we've been very much a junior partner of journalism. And so the Society of Professional Journalists and, we've been aligned in that way. So we would say, the New York Times is this respected institution, not to pick on them, or the Washington Post, right? But Kim Kardashian, she's just a reality star, right? No, they're in the continuum of influence. They're both mega influencers. They're both at the highest level of influence for different people. So if my couture lollipop I want to promote, if I get that mentioned in the New York Times, no one's going to buy it. But if Kim Kardashian promotes it on her Instagram, lots of people will buy it. So who's the bigger influencer? So what I'm saying is, let's put the judgment away about paid and unpaid, who's the hoity-toity versus the reality show. None of that matters. What matters is the source trusted or not trusted? And that's by your audience. And so the continuum of influence starts with that individual customer review, which, hey, it's just one person. It's not being in a big publication or TV outlet, but to the person who reads that customer review, and the customer review represents their use case for the product they're looking at, that's going to be more influential than anything they see or read anywhere else. And so you take that from customer review to someone who's a customer who maybe just has a good audience on social media. They can become a customer ambassador, to micro influencer, nano influencers, micro influencers, mega influencers, and the biggest broadcast media. All along the way, you can pair the analyst firms that we've always worshipped in tech PR, like the Gartners, to review sites. You've got to put all of the traditional labels away and focus on really what matters for the audience you're trying to reach. Which of these sources are going to generate the most trust, and what am I going to get the most bang for the buck for in terms of, should I spend my time helping my client get more reviews, more Google reviews, for example, or should I spend a month trying to pitch a publication that may or may not have the same impact as helping my client get that kind of credibility in other ways? So I present and say, as a PR person, none of this is neurosurgery here. This is not rocket science. It's just saying, you've been going this deep, in terms of who you're reaching out to. Just keep going deeper. It's not that long ago that not that many PR people were even bothering to pitch podcasts like yours. I'm sure you get pitches all the time now, right? Well, and I'm just saying, think about you're at the surface level. That's where your big top tier media stuff. Keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and more focused and more focused. That's the direction. Going broader is not going to get you where you want to go in the same way that going deeper. So going deeper from traditional media to podcast in many cases, it's not much different from creators and influencers, right. And influencers at every level. And sometimes you'll find, I got this macro influencer, let me keep going down. And guess what? This nano influencer, this little influencer has a lot more engagement. So I think thinking about this full spectrum is a first step to PR people realizing that they are naturally built, in my mind, to do more than what they've been labeled to be.
I was listening to your comments there, and I'm thinking about the criteria maybe that go into evaluating the trust of any particular outlet or influencer or anything. Do you think of it in terms of criteria? And are there bits of criteria? You talked about, readership. You talk about, maybe it's geographic representation or industry representation. I mean, what are you thinking about when you think about evaluating any one outlet or influencer or whatever for trust?
Well, ultimately, you're not looking at things that we've looked at in the past, like is it paid or organic or this or that. It doesn't matter, because someone who's paid as an influencer, if their audience trusts them and their recommendations, they're fine with this person making a living. They're not thinking that they're endorsing the product just because they got paid. It's just how they get paid. And that's very different to how PR people and journalists have traditionally thought. But so you're not looking at that, but you are looking in social at things like engagement. It's not about number of followers. You have to look at what's the level of engagement and what's the level of relevant engagement. And often that increases as the influencer gets smaller, because they become more focused on an audience that might be more closely aligned with you. But what we do big picture is, most people have heard of a marketing tool that's been around forever called buyer personas. And we do buyer persona research for our clients to help identify those target personas, these kind of buyer groups that you want to kind of personalize and personify and aim your marketing at. Well, it gives it away in its name that that's for marketers, not for PR people, because it's for buyers. And we know that PR people, buyers are just one of the audiences we worry about. We worry about buyers, employees, investors, community activists, you name it. The target audiences can vary. And also what we worry about that most marketers don't worry about is that increasingly people are making buying decisions based on factors that have nothing to do with the product itself. so much of marketing is focused on, oh, this product is great at that, this or that. Well, increasingly, people are making decisions on what they want to buy based on the values, what the perceived values of the brand. So all that having said, that means a buyer persona research is not a sufficient tool today. So I introduced the concept in the book of the trust profile, which is what you would do is two main things. Within quantitative research that can then be supported by some qualitative research, interviews and so forth, you are finding out what the values of your target audience is. So you can buy a lookalike list. If you have enough in your CRM, you can interview your customers. We want to better serve you. We want to better align with you. However you want to present it, you can reward them something to participate. But however you get the information, you're going to need to interview enough people or you're going to have to survey enough people that you've got a good statistical result. But you're going to find out. You ask questions like, what's important to you? Sustainability, Black Lives Matter, family values. You just take your pick, lay it all out there, ask questions. We did one, and we used a professional political survey organization called Signal, actually, and spelled differently, but based in DC. And so they're used to knowing how to ask these questions in such a way that they're not leading or what have you. And you really come back with a portrait that, hey, our customer base values this. They're primarily lean this way. This is what they want in terms of you talking or not talking about your values. And it can be, look, we've talked to too many clients who make these decisions based on the gut of the CEO. And even
which is probably the worst barometer out there, right?
Even if the data is imperfect, that's great data for making sure you're making the right decisions when you go out there on social and take a stand. Because these days, everybody wants you to take a stand. The worst thing you can do is not say anything, right? So get some data so you feel comfortable that you're making the right, that what you're saying is aligned with what your audience believes. Because otherwise, what are you doing? Otherwise, it's a vanity project of the CEO. The other key thing that this trust profile research does is it gets at your sources of influence. You find out, all the time in PR, how it is, like, and we work in B2B tech at IdeaGrow. So what are your trade publications? What publications do you want to be in? That's the worst possible research to ask the CEO of the client what publications he wants to be in. The question is, what do your audiences read and care about? So what if you put out a survey and you had all the trade publications in a space listed, and then nobody said they actually read any of them? And instead, they said they listened to a podcast, or they listened to, or they got their information from another source. This is the kind of thing that you can't make assumptions because there's so many sources of information today. Ask your audience what sources of information they use, what sources of information they trust, because how hard it is to pitch today when you got half as many reporters as you used to have and 5 times as many PR people pitching that half as many reporters. I mean, the math is not good and it's not getting better. So if you're going to invest all that time to do that pitch, don't you want to make sure that the audience even reads that publication or trusts that outlet? It's well worth doing that research up front before you spend all that time trying to get in an outlet that may or may not earn the awareness and trust from your audience.
I love how you have distilled this concept of trust, which is so personal, down into some sort of granular data points that can actually make sense, that you can actually act on in a logical way and explain in a logical way, and get away from what you just described as like the CEO or anybody else's gut feeling, right, about where they should be or why they should be there, or, going down the road into vanity projects. I just love it. And like I said, I believe so much in the concept of trust, because I do think it's the fundamental characteristic of our society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, civilizations can't exist without it. It truly can't.
This has been a terrific conversation, Scott. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Once again, we really appreciate it. Now, we usually segue into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast here. Now, you've done this once before, but you know what? We figured we'd give you another shot at it to see if anything's changed, and we'll go back and we'll see if any answers have changed here. Ready? Well, maybe we'll have some fun with this on social media when we post the episode. So with your indulgence, you've done this before. Here we go again. Rapid fire question number 1, Scott. What is your favorite news source?
My favorite news source. Oh my gosh. I think I might have said Twitter last time, so I'm not sure how I feel.
Well, that could be the answer to number 2, but go ahead.
I'll stick with Twitter.
All right. Rapid fire question number 2. What is your favorite social media platform?
My favorite social media platform is Quora.
That's right. I recall that about you. That's right. Tell me how you use Quora a little bit.
Well, 2 ways. There have been periods where I actively used it to write about in my industry, as well as other things that I was interested in. Just find a question, and sometimes that'll pop up high in search results. We've gotten leads and business relationship from it. But then, I just get lately with the book, I haven't had time. So I get the alerts, and I just like the questions they surface, and I like how they answer. I mean, I like Reddit too, but there's something about Quora. I just think Quora is such a civil discussion, which, as you know, you can't necessarily find on all social media sites. And I don't know. I geek out on it, and sometimes people say Quora, but it is one of the top 100 websites in the world in terms of traffic. So there's got to be other people that use it besides me.
There's got to be some trust going on there, right? Okay. Rapid fire question number 3, Scott. What is, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Rapid fire question number 3, Scott. Coffee or alcohol?
Well, in the morning, coffee. In the evening, alcohol. But if I have to choose between the two, we'll be good and say coffee.
Yeah. Rapid fire question number 4. What's your favorite on the run food?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not a lie. No, it's not a lie detector.
You don't have me hooked up, so I'll say coffee.
Look, if it was a lie detector, I wouldn't even be allowed on here. Let me give you a break. Rapid fire question number 4, Scott. What's your favorite on the run food?
On the run food. We'll go with the Pop-Tart.
Oh, any particular flavor?
Strawberry.
Popular, very popular.
But I don't like them with icing, though.
Oh, no icing, really?
That's an unpopular opinion.
Okay. Well, see, I got a sweet tooth, so I always need my junk on the side. All right, rapid fire question number 5, Scott. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
Ooh, wow. Gosh, I think maybe just a dad.
That sounds like a good plan. I am a dad myself, and I just got to say, I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Scott, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Well, you can find all about the book at trustsignals.com, which is a blog with like over 100 pieces on this topic of trust, in addition to a landing page where you can find out more about the book. My agency is called Idea Grove, Grove like an orange grove, ideagrove.com.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Scott. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.